Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om, I bow to the Lord Vasudeva. Hello, friends. I'm talking about the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, and a little bit further on in this chapter, it says, I have thus explained to you the... I'm sorry, my sight isn't as good as it ought to be. I have thus explained to you the ultimate wisdom of Sankhya. Now hear the wisdom of yoga. I'd like to talk about these different philosophies. There are 6 basic philosophies in India, but 3 of them are the most important: Sankhya, Yoga, Vedanta. And if you want to epitomize what each of them stands for, Sankhya talks about the need to get out of delusion, the need to get away from duality, the need to seek a higher truth. Vedanta describes what that higher truth is: infinite, omnipresent, etc. And yoga tells you how to get there. Most people think of these as conflicting philosophies, but they're not. They're all part of a basic system. We must understand that the Bhagavad Gita was born in a very ancient tradition. The Vedas are thousands and thousands of years old. People have tried to denigrate them because they wanted to say that the English and the Western civilization was more important. And there's a very interesting book that the Aurobindo Ashram put out. It's called The Invasion That Never Was. And the whole idea of the people in India being an Aryan invasion and the Dravidians and so on, this is an absolute myth. And the Western thought that the Vedas are fairly recent and nothing but a bunch of poems written by cowherds speculating about the heavens and so on. This is nonsense. Sri Aurobindo wrote some very insightful books on the subject. He showed how Tamil, for example, which was considered a Dravidian language, has its roots also in Sanskrit. And he showed how the meaning of the ancient words has changed. This is something that the Shankaracharya of Govardhan Math in Puri pointed out also, that he said that when the Vedas give you the mathematics of ancient times, the literal translation according to the modern knowledge of the meaning of old words came out like, in the reign of Kangsha there was bloodshed, pestilence, and famine. Well, that has nothing to do with mathematics. But he meditated on it deeply, and he was a very learned man. And he found that, in fact, it was a very good mathematical formula. They had simply lost the meaning of the words. Aurobindo pointed out, for example, that when they spoke of cows, and the Vedas are full of cows, and you think it must be a cowherd kind of society then. But he said that the ancient meaning of go, which is cow, is also light. In fact, some friends I stayed with in Arizona who were devotees of Aurobindo, they got a letter once to "Dear Cows of Light." Anyway, the thing is that the Vedas are a very deep scripture, and in our modern understanding, trying to read the translations, or if you know Sanskrit, even trying to read the Sanskrit, they don't make an awful lot of sense. And the English came in there with dirty boots and just mucked the whole thing up. But the interesting thing is that all the ancient people who are more within our time range say that the Vedas contain all knowledge. And the summation of the Vedas is contained in the Upanishads. The summation of the Upanishads is contained in the Bhagavad Gita. So the Bhagavad Gita, in essence, teaches the entire range of Indian philosophy. And therefore, in some of these chapters in the beginning where he's talking about the Sankhya philosophy, he's sort of chopping it up a little bit. It's not one long logical sequence. For example, in the 26th and 27th stanzas, which I made the mistake of putting together, it says, even, however, if you prefer to think of the self as perishable, why grieve? What is born must die. Whatever dies must be born again. Why lament that which cannot be avoided? Now here, in one paragraph, but 2 stanzas, it seems like a complete contradiction, doesn't it? I mean, first of all, if you think that the self dies, if it's perishable, then how can you say that whatever dies must be born again? But I've understood, meditating on this, that he's not meaning it to be a logical sequence. It's illogical. It's a non sequitur. But these are 2 separate stanzas, and they're not a continuous argument. Each one is bringing out a part of this philosophy of Sankhya. So while Krishna is trying to persuade Arjuna that he must do his duty and fight, he's also trying to bring out the philosophy of Sankhya and the teaching that in this philosophy, the different truths that it teaches, he has to crowd them all in here and somehow try to add them up as an argument for what he's telling Arjuna, which is basically, you've got to do your duty, and the war that you're fighting is really not a physical war. It's against your own lower nature, and your fear of destroying your lower tendencies, your fear that you'll destroy part of yourself, that you'll be less a man, less a human being if you do this. This is all based on delusion. So Krishna's got that basic argument to follow, but he's trying to put in, as I read it, these different things that add up to the whole philosophy of why you need to get out of delusion, why you need to conquer your lower nature and claim your higher nature. And so there are a few non sequiturs here where, on the one hand, he's saying, even if you don't believe in anything, on the other hand, you'll go to heaven if you do this. It doesn't make sense if you follow it, just logically. The only thing that does make sense is if you think of each stanza as a separate thing, but also with, to some extent, a separate teaching. And so the first of these is, even, however, if you prefer to think of the self as perishable, why grieve? These stanzas at this point are mainly focused on why grieve, on being even-minded. You see, the nature of reality is Dvaita, duality, and we must try to find that midpoint. As long as we grieve over the situations in this world, the deaths, the lives, the births, the sickness, all the failures, disappointments, and so on, all of these, if we grieve about them, we get caught up in the storm of Maya. So what Krishna is saying here, first of all, is calm your mind. Don't get excited. Just try to, until your mind is calm, you won't see things as they really are. So he's saying, don't grieve, don't rejoice, just be even-minded in the middle of these 2 opposites. Joy to you.